All That There Is by Jared I. McGee. 4 a.m. The time of night when nefariousness gives way to diligence, hard-nosed industriousness, when artists begin to create universes, when little girls fall prey to monsters that aren't supposed to exist in the real world. Daniel Brenner sat wondering why he was wasting electricity on even having his television roaring Star Trek Deep Space Nine in the background. His attentions were certainly not with the intrepid members of the space station, characters whom he had loved in his childhood. Nostalgia could not take, distract, or comfort him tonight. No, he was wrapped by the police files on his desk. Well, he had been for some time. Now he was staring at sickening black and white photos, no thoughts of consequence passing through his mind. He leaned back and let his mind wander. 4 years. He'd been writing crime reports for the New Dublin Sentinel for 4 years. Had anyone told him this would be what he ended up doing with his MFA, past Daniel would have scoffed, laughed, possibly even wept. The type of horrors that a crime reporter is privy to and the frequency with which they must subject themselves to these atrocities often break a budding writer. In truth, he now loved the job. As it turned out, Daniel had an aptitude for crime writing. He had garnered a reputation for being thorough, unflinching, and objective, all while maintaining a feeling of compassion in his writing. His readership felt that he cared, and they were not too far from the truth. Like most well-balanced humans, Daniel did not particularly like to see death, dismemberment, rape, and general violence. In his recent experiences, he had, however, grown a bit cold to the shock and the primal anger he had once felt at viewing crime scenes, flipping through photos, or reading graphic police reports. Despite this, his ability to put forth an air of genuine concern in his news type never faltered. Maybe this was increasingly disingenuous as his stronger emotions began to fade, but the people liked it, and Daniel always was a people pleaser. Only the past 2 years had seen Daniel taking his talents elsewhere. After reading enough subpar pop detective fiction, he had decided that, with his real-world experience in the darkest places known to humanity, he could outright all those hacks that were currently raking in easily 10 times his meager newspaper salary. His initial short pieces garnered some attention. The attention prompted lunch meetings with men and women in expensive suits. The suits told him to fuck off. All save one. Alicia. She was not a suit so much as a too-tight red dress with no panty line and a sharp neckline. Stilettos. The meetings had been quick, almost terse, pointed. There was no question that Alicia was going to sign Daniel to a minor yet promising 2-book deal. She laid that out plain and simple within the first quarter hour of their Denny's breakfast for lunch meeting. The buxom woman had other ideas to discuss as well. Vivacious, heady ideas that saw Daniel becoming a regular of the local Hyatt. At first, he thought he might be crossing some ethical boundary that should remain uncrossed. There was the cliché adage about dipping one's quill in the company ink. Yet, the more he took part in his boss-turned-lover's debased fantasies come to life, the more he could not help but feel as if he were losing a part of himself he had once jealously guarded. Dr. Trace, a professor from Daniel's undergraduate days, had an obsession with Faust that he impressed upon his students rapaciously. This forced obsession by proxy came rushing back with each successive orgasm. The things that Alicia asked him to do, to say, they were beyond the pale in any realm of depravity. She wanted him to act out the murders, the brutalization, the atrocities that had provided him his life for so many years. Alicia wanted to be the woman being clubbed to death, the man being raped then shot in the back of the head, the little girl having her face sliced to shreds. Alicia was one sick, twisted, sadistic, beautifully sinful bitch, and he knew he could not get away from her, both for the sake of his book deal and his ever-waxing libido. Daniel realized he was still staring at one of the police photos, his erection an exclamation point that seemed extremely out of place while looking at the charnel scene. He shook his head once and began to refocus. Delaney Santos, 13, 1969. Beaten, brutally raped, flesh missing from her face. Cut with what the ME said was scary precision. Semen present in oral swab. Flesh not present at crime scene. Witnesses who startled the perp report him chewing or consuming missing flesh. Small child's doll found shoved into her vaginal cavity, noose around its neck. Makeup applied to make the girl smile. As he flipped through the reports, Daniel could not help but feel the grit that begins to accumulate when in close proximity to humanity in its rawest forms. He felt that grit acutely, and he smiled. He smiled. His erection remained. His own reaction gave him a shiver. Daniel looked back down at the grainy photo in front of him and froze. Yes, those were wire-rimmed, circular frames, quite unlike the sleek, black Burberrys sitting atop his nose. Yes, those were heavily starched, semi-formal clothes in place of his usual grasping at the good life Old Navy faux dress attire. But those superficialities could not change his own visage, staring back at him from nearly half a century, smiling despite the harsh glare of the police interrogation room. Impossibly, there sat Daniel Brenner, smiling that smile that kept creeping onto his face tonight. Degeneracy incarnate. There, in a ragged-edged 43-year-old photo, he saw himself, a monster, unchanging, a manifestation of all the vile, all the venomous, all the off in the world. Daniel Brenner smiled again. This was going to be an amazing novel. An amazing life. Thank you for listening to All That There Is, a short story by Jared I. McGee. The track behind the short story is Snowdrop, an original composition by Kevin MacLeod, and is being used under a Creative Commons Attribution Share-alike License 3.0. A collection of classical tracks recorded by Kevin MacLeod under the Creative Commons Attributions license is available. Famous pieces by well-known composers can be found alongside even more of Kevin MacLeod's own compositions. These can be found at incomptech.com. And for loads of great free music, visit the Free Music Archive at freemusicarchive.org. Again, many thanks for listening to this short story, and as always, please keep your eyes peeled for the next short story from Prose.